It's like a teenage dream. An antelope prom. I don't know about you, but I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall for that one. Last year, researchers in Kenya got a glimpse of something similar when they were trying to collar some antelopes with tracking devices. The scientists wanted to study the animals' behavior, specifically how they use their habitat. But as they approached the antelopes, they noticed something odd. The antelopes all seemed to know the researchers were there, and instead of running away, they started doing this. They gathered together in a big group and stared at the researchers intently. And then one brave, maybe even curious antelope came up to the researchers and rubbed against their vehicle. It was a bizarre moment that left the scientists feeling like they had stumbled onto some kind of secret party they weren't invited to. After all, animals usually try to avoid humans. So why were these antelopes acting so friendly? Hi, and welcome to this channel. In April of 2021, two conservation researchers with the non-profit organization Space for Giants were driving through a national park in Kenya. Their plan was to find a small herd of Bera antelope and put tracking collars on them. That way they could monitor where the antelope went and what they did in the hopes of learning how to better protect the species. Bera are one of the most endangered antelope species in Africa, with only around 1,000 individuals left in the wild. As the researchers drove along, their guide pointed out a herd of about 15 Bera up ahead. The researchers parked their vehicle and got out, trying to sneak closer to the antelope. They were hoping to get within 500 meters without being seen, but just as they got out of the car, one of the antelopes lifted its head and stared directly at them. Within seconds, all 15 antelopes had abandoned their grazing and were staring intently at and then something completely unexpected happened. One of the antelopes ambled over to the researchers, rubbed against their vehicle, and then trotted back over to the herd. Another antelope then came over to the car and sniffed it. Then a third antelope came over and rubbed against the car again. Soon the whole herd was gathered around the vehicle, staring at the entire interaction left the scientists bewildered and a little bit scared. Finally, after about 15 minutes, the antelopes went back to grazing. The researchers took that as their cue to try to get closer again. But before they could, another herd of 20 or so antelopes came thundering up to the vehicle. Again, they stared intently at the researchers, and then one of them boldly rubbed against the car. This time, the researchers decided to cut their losses and head back to camp without their collared antelopes. But they weren't giving up. The next day, they tried again, approaching a different herd of antelopes. Once more, the same thing happened. The antelopes stared at them and one rubbed against the vehicle. At this point, the researchers realized that there was something going on that they didn't understand. Antelopes are prey animals. They should have been scared of the researchers, not friendly. And they definitely shouldn't have known the researchers were there before they were spotted. But they did. And that can mean only one thing. Someone had come to tell them the researchers were coming. But who? It was likely a nearby male, one that hadn't been spotted by the researchers. Males are generally much larger than females, up to twice as heavy, and it is thought that they may form loose groups to help keep females and their offspring safe from predators. If that's the case, then it makes sense that the males would act as lookouts. In fact, when the researchers finally managed to get close enough to collar a female, they heard the loud, angry bark of an unseen male. So it is possible that the male had been watching them the whole time and had been warning the herd. That would explain why the antelopes all acted so strangely when they saw they had been expecting company. If further research confirms that this is the case, it will be the first evidence of alarm calling in antelopes, and it will show that these animals have a much more complex social life than we ever imagined.